You are watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. I'm Chad Wilson. That's Emil Calomino, and we are here with you. Week 2 of the NFL, Week 3 college football. We are rearing and ready to go. And we are going to talk about the action that went down last week and what you can expect coming up this week. Emil, we kicked ass and took names in the NFL. Our college football, not so much, but we'll get it
Well,
together here going.
again, we had overall what I call we gave some vig away, which in the first couple of weeks, I'll be honest with you, and I know people don't want to hear this. If we start hot, I get excited, but generally, if I'm just if we're just treading water for till we find out what these teams are doing, I don't consider that bad because I really look at you got to figure this stuff out. We'll talk about the college games. In one of them, I took a very bad beat, a
Yes,
very bad beat.
indeed. I
Yeah,
feel bad for you. We will have several of those. We'll have some good wins too, where
sure.
you pull a rabbit out of a hat. So that's just all part of the season from our perspective when you're out here predicting games. So we're gonna get into that. We're gonna have some college football picks. We'll talk about the action from last week, even a couple of games that we did not pick that we found interesting. Likewise, we'll do the same with the NFL and give you our predictions at the end. So stay tuned, folks, for all of that. Emil, I mean, listen. I had a 3-0 week in the NFL, but boy, people were really pissed off about my pick of the 49ers over the Jets. I'm a native New Yorker. God bless New Yorkers. They come together and they fight and they believe in the hype. And man, were they ever believe in the hype on the New York Jets. So I'm looking forward to perhaps you can do this, making a pick that pisses people off this week. But before we get into all of it,
Piss people off. I mean, you predicted the game the way you saw the game.
I mean, hey, this is what the facts presented to me allowed me to call. So, hey, you can be mad about it, nevertheless. All right, before we jump in all that, Emma, what a way to kick off your NFL season if your name is Tyreek Hill.
Oh wow!
You're on your way to the season. You're on your way to your season opener at home, where things are really supposed to go your way. I mean, damn, it's a home game, right? You know how people talk about home cooking, blah blah blah. Well, no home cooking for Tyreek Hill outside of his own stadium. He gets pulled over in his McLaurin, by the way. All right, so I'm not sure what for. We everyone said speeding, I guess, which is
They visually viewed him speeding. Didn't have a gun.
right. Sometimes you could be sitting in a parked McLaurin. It can look like it's going 40, 50 miles an hour, but never.
Sure.
He's pulled over, and what should have been just a routine traffic stop turns into Tyreek Hill, a couple hours away from playing a game, season opener against the Jacksonville Jaguars, face down on the pavement, handcuffed, and being detained. I don't want to say on his way to jail. Nowadays, we've become more familiar with the term detained. It's where you look like you might be going to jail, but you don't actually go to jail. The funny part is this is happening right outside the stadium with hundreds of fans going by. And in this day and age, you can film everything. So it was wild for me on Sunday morning to see this going on. Emil, what are your thoughts on this now that we have a dash cam video of what happened? Feel free to share your
I
thoughts.
don't want to get too dark here since we're doing a sports uh, prognostication show. Okay, 'cause in our old format, we could talk more about this. What I will say is a couple things. For context for the audience, I have family members in law enforcement. I'm a big supporter of law enforcement, and frankly, listening to Tyreek Hill after that night, he's a big supporter of law enforcement too. So here, a couple things. Let's start at the beginning with lesson one for Tyreek Hill and anybody else is you don't have to be a hole for lack of a better word. Okay, when the cop asks you for your license, which he provided, and he tells you leave the window down, leave the window down. There's no problem. That said, being an a-hole is not a crime.
Right.
It's just okay. The cop can double the ticket if he wants. I don't care. I didn't see the necessity. And again, I always err on the side of caution. I know these guys are out there in dangerous conditions. We see police shot and killed every day.
Mhm.
But let's be honest. Outside a Dolphins game with thousands of people and a guy in a $400,000 to $500,000 car, okay, clearly a player. Okay, this was not Miami Vice.
Right.
I thought it was excessive. Matter of fact, I'll be shocked. Now the union may save them. I don't know, but somebody's at least getting I think, a pretty substantial suspension there. If not, a dismissal, because
It's Miami. It's Miami. So you wouldn't put money down on something like that. But it's
if you
just
gave
funny
me
to me.
plus 300 on the suspension, I'd take it.
You would do what?
If you give me plus 300, I'll take a suspension.
Well, it'd be nice. Bovada, what do you have on the odds of
I
this
mean,
officer being
didn't you see? I mean, honestly, like, let's not be hyperbolic here. Let's contextualize. Understanding that cops are often placed in positions where side of the road, I pull a guy over, he rolls his window up. I don't know what he's doing in the car. That part I completely get. So I'm not in a different situation. Maybe I'd be saying it's warranted. In this situation, given how many people were around, the nature of the stop, the car, I look inside, obviously he can tell it's a professional. I mean, come on, you have to be under a rock outside a Dolphins game to not think this is a professional athlete. I think the cop was more about asserting his power. Like, you're not going to roll that window up. Almost like when you have a kid, right? Your son walks out of the room when he's 14 and you grab him by the collar and say, "Where are you going? I'm not done speaking to you." Okay.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. What's amazing to me is as you go around in social media and you see the videos and then you look at the comments, just how separated, once again, we are on an issue seemingly along racial lines. If you look at it, the majority of, black individuals commenting on this will 100% tell you the cops were way out of line, they're sick of it, and so on and so forth. And then on the other spectrum, the white um, folks, not all of them, maybe 50-50, but you have enough people saying, this is 100% on Tyreek Hill. If you didn't act like that, if you weren't an a-hole, if you weren't, arrogant, you didn't act like an entitled individual, none of this would have happened. My look at it is this. I will agree with you. Yes. I'm sure if we've seen the videos of cops getting jumped out on a traffic stop and ending up in a gunfight, which they don't always win. Sometimes they don't go home to their families. You will understand that, that the window being down is really a safety issue. I don't know what you're doing in there. On the flip side, though, this is not a Chrysler LeBaron that was pulled over on the side of a neighborhood where this could really be a thing. You are at a Dolphin game with hundreds of people going, traffic, basically. You're there to control traffic, so there are people all over the place, and you are pulling over a McLaurin. So the chances of there being someone with a homicidal, felonious state of mind is probably not likely. I think it really was about what you said. I think these officers wanted to impose their will and their dominance on a person that they pulled over and went way overboard. First, the rapping on the window, and then the insisting that the window be down in a kind of you will do it or else, and then so quickly it turned into get out of the car. So I'm going to say this. Once you take an individual out of the car, whether you make them get out under their own power or you pull them out, it's a totally different traffic stop at that point. And really, the second cop that came over really inflamed it because he went to pulling on the door and then pulling him out by his head. Now it's a totally different deal. We've entered into a whole new realm. There really wasn't any reason for you to pull him out. Emil, do you
By
have
the way, just 1 second. He didn't. Not to be silly here. Okay, there's 4-on-1 or whatever it was. He didn't fight. I mean, he could have jacked any one of those guys. Now, granted, it would have been 4-on-1, and that worked out well. But at the end of the day, he didn't even fight back. He went like I would almost call like a fish. Like here, I mean, he just
do what you got to do, right?
Got to do. He didn't even fight back. So I'm sorry, but I just anybody who hasn't seen the video, there is no resistance on his part.
No, but there really was no need for that. I'm struck by, Emil, if you could remember the viral video of an officer that writes a ticket to someone on the side of, I think, is an interstate, and the guy loses his mind about the amount of the ticket. And he tears the ticket up and throws it out the window. And the cop calmly says, I'm going to give you a littering ticket if you don't, pick this up. So the guy gets out and he's screaming and he's pissed and he picks up the pieces and gets back in and he goes up. The guy says, have a nice day. I pulled you over for an infraction. I'm going to write you a ticket. Here's the ticket. Move on. That's all that really needed to happen. But it became this pissing contest that went on there. Yes, did Tyreek Hill follow protocol that you would like to see someone follow when they're pulled over? No, he did not. Not against the law, but then the cops were overzealous. And I really, quite honestly, this is probably an overtime detail. At the very least, all those dudes should lose that. They should not be there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to.
A little Sunday privilege and overtime.
Yeah, they're not going to lose their jobs, but someone I think needs a little suspension. Again, that's just my opinion.
I'm willing to bet that officer, the second one they came over, maybe both.
The guy who dragged him out of the car.
They have complaints, without a doubt in my mind. They have complaints. They've got stuff in their folder. You didn't just act like this today. You've been in the community acting like this, so this is just another.
I'm going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and you can educate me on this part of it. But as best I can tell, and I've spent some time in Miami over the years, so I don't know it like you, but I've been down there enough. I'm guessing the two main officers there were Cuban Americans.
It sure seems that way.
And, from what I understand, there's a little bit of this between the two communities.
No doubt.
So I don't know.
No doubt. So it's already a bit of that. I'm not even sure if that came into play. I will not make generalizations about Cuban police officers. Matter of fact, I had a friend of mine that we both coached a Little League baseball team, and he's a Cuban SWAT member for that same department. And he's as nice a guy as there is.
Oh, listen, I don't misunderstand. I'm a big
if what you're saying is
the two communities.
Yeah, if what you're saying, the tension between the black and Cuban community, 100%. And Emil, it goes all the way back to the riots in the 80s. It started with a black motorist it goes that far back. So, and it has persisted. But at the end of the day, that's how that went. I think there's lessons to be learned.
Two Chumps take on the Tyreek Hill incident.
Yeah, we got no odds on anything here, but I feel pretty good those guys won't be outside the stadium at the next Miami Dolphins home game. All right, let's move on to college football. We're going to hit that one first. Let's talk about how we did last week, Emil. Let's swallow that bitter pill.
Do we have to?
I think I got hosed twice last week.
Okay, I'll start because mine's easier. I took a collar last week in college football, 0-3. Okay, so that puts my season record going into this week at 2-4. But I want to go down. Two of the picks were just flat out bad picks. Anybody who knows me well enough knows I wanted Texas to beat Michigan in that game as far as my fandom goes. But I got that line at 7. And early in the summer, when you were looking at future lines on big games, Texas was a 3-point favorite against Michigan. So my initial reaction was, okay, this is an overreaction to week 1. Texas beating Colorado State 52-0. Michigan struggling a little at home with Fresno State. So I figured complete overreaction. I'm picking up an extra 4 points. I've got a full touchdown. I figured if Texas wins this game, it's going to be a low-scoring affair, 20-17, 21-17. I figured 7 points. Michigan's going to come out and play tough. I was never so wrong. That score was not indicative of how much Texas dominated that football game. I felt once Texas realized Michigan can't get to 14 today, they kind of got conservative with their play calling, figuring we're not going to help this team. The final ended up 31-12. I think if Texas really, really said we're going to take some chances, they probably could have cracked 40 in that game. They had Michigan's defense confused. Michigan would go big in the middle. Texas would start throwing the ball to the outside. Michigan would get small. Texas would run it.
I mean, Emil, it's early in the year. Yeah. But I will say 2 weeks in, really looking at that, Texas looks like the number 1 team in the nation to me.
I was high on Texas going into the year. I'm still high on Texas. As long as he can keep them even-keeled, and not getting full of themselves. They're a tough team to beat. I mean, they've got a good offensive line. The quarterback's definitely going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL. They've got receivers. The defense looks a lot better. I mean, than they've traditionally been doing lately at Texas. So, yeah, I mean, right
Yeah,
now,
I saw size, speed,
yeah.
tenacity, and high quality quarterback play, and that typically puts you in the top 4 in the country, and
Yeah,
that's
they're going to
exactly
be.
what
Listen,
Texas is like.
they're going to be a tough out. So I was wrong there. Should have just stayed off the game from a gambling perspective. That's probably one where you learn a lesson. My fandom didn't meet up with. I tried to get cute. What I probably should have said is just get some popcorn, root for Texas, and lay off Michigan. So I took a loss there. The next one, I had Penn State minus whatever it was, 34 or 35. It's irrelevant.
Mm.
Traditionally, this has been a game that James Franklin, these kind of games, Penn State will score 56 and win the game 56-10.
Mm.
They've been a bully against these MAC teams. I mean, 2 weeks, they're going to play Kent State. Okay. Kent State, for those of you not following along, lost to St. Francis of Pennsylvania last week, which I believe is an FCS school. I mean, I think it's out near Pittsburgh. For those who don't know, I live in Pennsylvania, but they lost to St. Francis. Okay,
Mm. Mm.
so that's kind of like where I
Sounds like
go.
a high school, but
It
anyway.
does sound so. Anyway, I figured here goes Penn State. Bowling Green gave Penn State everything they wanted and more.
I mean, it was a serious game deep
That
into the
was a
second half.
serious game. It was 24-20 Bowling Green at the half. Penn State took a brief 3-point lead in the third. Finally, late, opened it up to 10. The game ended up 34-27. That was just, I don't know what I was doing there. I mean, I think my logic was right based on history, but I think where I'm missing it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm worried about Penn State's defense. Not just because of that game. There were some missed opportunities in the West Virginia game where West Virginia had some chances and just boogered them up. I
Mm.
mean,
For
so
lack of a better term, yes.
yeah, so that's 0-2. And here's the one where, folks, the bad beat. I was on the right side of this game. I had Arkansas plus 7.5. It went up to 10 in some places by game day.
Hopefully, our viewers at home got that.
Hopefully, you folks got it at 10. I got it at 7.5. Arkansas has a list this long of ways they not only didn't cover the game, but should have won the game.
Right.
From missed field goals, personal fouls toward the end or in overtime to extend drives, you name it. They had a chance to win it in regulation. They had a chance to lose it by 3 in overtime. Oklahoma State missed a field goal. End of the day, this game goes to the second overtime. Of course, Oklahoma State gets the ball first, scores, and new rules in the last couple of years. Second overtime, you got to go for 2. They hit it, 39-31. I can't get lucky and at least have Arkansas go and miss the 2 or whatever. They just end the game. They lose it. They don't score. Game ends up 39-31. I lose by a half a point in a game. And you know this, Chad. Arkansas, as far as like if you went play-by-play analysis, pro football focus sort of stuff.
I mean, you were on the right side.
Yeah. They won the game.
No question. You were on the right side.
They ended up losing a game that they had 640 yards of offense.
Yeah, by 8 points. Unbelievable.
Yes.
But Big 12, baby. Big 12 football. So, yeah, an unfortunate caller. The gods will get you down the road.
Yes. I'm too here.
On my end, 1-2. All right. My second back-to-back 1-2. I'm not going to cry over it. Like you said, it's early in the season. Still trying to figure out what's what. But my foolery started on Friday night. Northwestern is they're kind of handling, Duke in that game. They're doing what they got to do. I mean, they're not running away, but they've got a significant enough lead, which sure enough, they decided to give away towards the end and sent the game to overtime. And I believe I was 2.5, minus 2.5 on that. You would think, okay, Northwestern, you're at home in a game that you kind of like have had the upper hand in for the most part. You go into overtime, and at the very least, man, you kick a field goal, and you get out of there, and you win the thing 23-20. No, we don't do that. We don't want to do that because that's what Chad wants. You go ahead and you let Duke score a touchdown. I think they failed to get the extra point, And then, Northwestern can't match, so I take a loss on that one. Iowa dominating for the majority of their game against Iowa State, as I fully expected, playing really, really good defense in that game, as I would expect, and I've spoken about. They go into the halftime 13-0. I'm like, yeah, I got this. There's, the chances of Iowa State scoring more than 10 points here, and I think my number was also 2.5, maybe 3 on that one. The chances of Iowa State scoring more than 10 points in this second half, based on what I saw in the first half, I don't see it. Oh, yeah? 14 points for Iowa State in that third quarter. They had another 6 and kick a late field goal to win it. But at that point, I started rooting for Iowa State, since you know how this goes when you made a pick.
It's the spite. It's like,
right, if your team's not going to cover,
if I can't win, I hope you lose.
Oh, take the L. You're a ranked team, and you can't knock off Iowa State, which is not. This is not one of the most killer Iowa State teams. You're at home. You're dominating for the first half, and you forget. Oh, there's a third quarter. We have to play a second half. No, not Iowa. So yeah, thank God. They ended up losing the game.
This is a note. This is a game where I took note for future. And everybody does this and should do it early in the year instead of getting frustrated and angry. Make some notes for yourselves, folks, because as the year goes along, remember these situations. And the scary thing with Iowa is maybe they're just a team that you're hesitant to take as a favorite, because the problem I have with Iowa, they always play good defense, great defense, but it's hard for them to get away from another team unless that team just kicks the ball around, because offensively they're just not dynamic enough where they can get up 20 points in a game. You know what I mean?
Well, they've played through these 2 games, or at least a quarter and a half. They look better offensively, and I'm almost ready to say, Emil, that's what cost them here. Like, being a little too wide open offensively caused a defensive problem. And this fact is not lost on me about Iowa. Part of the reason why you've been able to play such great defense over the last few years is because of how you play offense, and you don't give the other team a whole lot of opportunities to have the football and rack up yards and do all of that. They're very much ground control. They chew up clock. You don't get to run as many plays against Iowa, and that's kind of kept the numbers down. They do play solid defense, though, because I've actually seen it.
Oh, yeah, no. It keeps the numbers down, and again, this is a point I touched on last week. It also changes the other team's philosophy as well, because they know, hey, these guys play really good defense. They're not a dynamo offensively, so we're going to get more conservative, because, my God, we're not going to throw an interception on our own 15-yard line and help this offensively challenged team. So when you put that whole thing in a bowl and mix it up, it makes Iowa's defense, even though they're strong schematically and they're solid, it makes it even better, because even a good offensive team goes, I'm not sure I really want to open up.
Yeah, it forces you to play differently. And to that point, one of my early years coaching Little League football, we played a team that was, they would direct snap, actually roll the ball back to the quarterback, and they had all the backs were in the backfield. Everyone off the line of scrimmage was in the backfield. One big line, roll the ball back, pick it up, run straight ahead, cloud of dust. The most cloud of dust offense you would ever see. They were really, really good at it. And Emil, every time I played this team, I knew I was going to get 3.5 possessions in the game.
Wait. Help me here. I know it's Little League football, but they rolled the ball back?
Couldn't get a legit, they didn't win a chance, like an actual snap that could go fly over the head. So the kid's back there looking like Derek Jeter in his shortstop stance, waiting for a ground ball, and it rolls back there to him, and they had it down to a science.
Video of everything. Send me some of this. I
have to go dig and find the VHS tapes, but they'd roll it back there, catch it. The other 2-3 backs run up into the line. The line pushes, and they get in there 2-3 yards, 2-3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards.
Sounds like the Eagles here.
Yeah, if you do something drastic to try and stop it, they'll pop off a 10, 15-yard run. Now it's a chunk play, and yeah, it made me play differently on offense, because, man, if they get this ball, I don't know when I'm going to get it back. Like, twice I played them, I had one possession in the first half. There's 8-minute quarters in Little League.
Yeah.
So one damn possession, I better do something great with it. So I get that whole thing. And
Yeah.
that's what goes on with Iowa. I don't want to go too long about
Now,
it.
talk about your winner because
Pick
this
I'm
is a good
proud
pick.
of.
This is a
It
good
took
pick.
stones, man, to take Michigan State against Maryland. Trust me, I belabored over this. I smoked a whole pack of cigarettes before I made the pick. And I said, damn it, man, I'm going to go with what I believe here. Maryland's not at that point yet where they can go lay that kind of cheese on the road. And Michigan State's got to stand up. I know they didn't look good against FAU in week 1. That would be a chance for odds makers to throw a few more pieces of pepperoni on this pie and throw the number where it should be. And so I got that, and I'll take that. That victory was as good as 2 for me.
So, before we give our picks this week, summarizing, you were 1-2. So that puts we're both 2-4 on the year in college football. And if you're struggling with math, that means we're 4-8. Relax. If you played our NFL picks last week, again,
You're good. We got you
you only
right.
lost the VIG so far this year, but we're going to get hot. I'm confident, especially in college. I've seen this happen year after year. We always seem, and maybe it's because there's not as much information, even though that's our job to find it. There's just not as much information about college teams, and there's 135 Division I teams or something like that. Versus the NFL, it seems like college we get off to a slow start. Let me give you. I'll go first in college. You go first in the pros. I'm going to start you off on Friday night, folks, and everybody who listens to this show knows I'm a big supporter of Kansas State this year. I got them to win the Big 12. Okay. I didn't fade them on the show, but I did fade them last week. I took Tulane plus 10 at home. Kansas State won by 7. That doesn't mean I'm not supporting Kansas State, but Kansas State is a different kind of animal. If you look at most of their good seasons when they're 9-3 or 10-2, there's a ton of close games in there. That's just Kansas State football. And I do think that they'll probably figure out a way on Friday night to win this game at home on Fox. But I think the odds makers have gotten carried away with themselves here. I mean, I clued my partner in here last year when my Trojans were still in the Pac-12 and Arizona was as well. And I saw this quarterback at Arizona, and I said to him, that was a game we had won. I think it was like 43-41 in overtime. I said, hey, Chad, I know our defense is horrible this year, but this kid has got something there at Arizona. He's got that it. And
And you were right
yeah,
about that.
he seems to have that. They throw the ball all over the place. They've got a great NFL quality receiver that's going to go high. And you're giving them 7.5 points here in a primetime game. I mean, this is a big deal. Even though it's Friday night, Arizona doesn't find themselves on a Fox 8 o'clock game very often. So, I'm thinking, they're going to go and put their best foot forward here. I expect this to be probably, and maybe even the most entertaining, best game of the weekend. It's sad. I wish it was on Saturday night. Anyway, I'm going to take Arizona plus 7.5 here. I think this game is back and forth, entertaining, and because it's at home, Kansas State pulls it out. It wouldn't surprise me if the game went into overtime. And if that happens, please don't win by 8. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah,
give me Arizona State.
his heart can't take this 2 weeks in a row.
Arizona plus 7.5. Next game, another surprisingly, I think, good game. I'm going to grab Boston College plus 16.5 against Missouri. Missouri. How do I say it? Missouri? Missouri?
Missouri.
Missouri. I'm going to grab Boston College plus 16.5. I think O'Brien's got this team playing physical football. I don't think the Florida State win was a fluke. Of course, I think Florida State's a whole other subject. They're not as good as we thought they were. But that said, they still went down there. They didn't know that going into the game. They weren't intimidated. It was on a Monday night, Labor Day night. It was a national game. Boston College showed out that night. And I think this is a game where there's a chance that the Missouri players don't take that film seriously because they see Boston College rolling in and they're not an SEC team and we're Missouri now. And, Missouri had a good year last year, but let's be honest, they're not a juggernaut. I mean, this is not a program that every year is used to being in the top 10. So we'll see how they handle success. They've pitched 2 shutouts. I think Murray State was one of them, and I don't even know the other opponent, but Boston College is not Murray State. I mean, they're going to be physical. O'Brien's usually going to figure out a way to move the football a little bit here. And 16.5 points, yeah, I'll grab 16.5 points at Boston College. And then finally, this pick is a pick that I'm basing on a couple things, not just Oregon. I'm going to take Oregon State, folks, grabbing 16 in a rivalry game that used to be played the Civil War, as we would call it, at the end of the season. We can't use that term anymore, but on our show, just like Washington will always be the Redskins, the Oregon State game will always be the Civil War. Okay, that's what it was called. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay,
What my daddy called it, that's what we'll
we're
call
going
it.
to call it. I'm going to take them for a simple reason. Two things. One, Oregon State's coming in here with a chip on their shoulder. The Pac 12 was disbanded. Everybody went their merry way. Four of them went to the Big 10, four of them went to the Big 12. Stanford and Cal went to the ACC. And Oregon State and Washington State, for some reason, the music stopped and they weren't given a chair. Okay. And they're going to remember that here. Okay. And I'll be honest, I know it's only 2 games in. I don't like what I'm seeing from Oregon. I don't know if they spent the offseason reading about themselves, because for a school that has the recruiting classes they have, even if we give them a pass on the Idaho game, okay, first game of the season, FCS didn't take them seriously. They had to take Boise State seriously. Boise State's been a threat for 20 years now in these type of games, and I'll be honest, the kickoff return saved them. That momentum had in the fourth quarter had completely swung to Boise State. They had a 7-point lead. Kid from Oregon houses a 100-yard kickoff return. Fourth quarter plays out. Oregon kicks a field goal with 20 seconds left and wins by 3. That is not a team at this juncture that should be laying 16 points in a rivalry game. So that's my 3. I'm taking the points in college football. Simple, and I'm going to get back on the bike this week.
What's your number on that game again?
16. Oregon State plus 16.
All right. So he's taking he is definitely rolling with the dogs this week. Emil is going to take Arizona on a Friday night against Kansas State, someone he was high on early in the season. He thinks they'll pull it out late, but 7.5 is too much. Woe to his heart if this thing goes to the overtime, folks. I will have to check in on your buddy Emil Calomino. He likes Boston College, who he thinks looked pretty impressive coming out. They're getting a big 16, so it looks good to him. Is that 16 and a hook? 16 and a hook. Can't forget the hook. And he also likes Oregon State in this meeting of old Pac-12 rivals. And he's going to take Oregon State, the Beavers, plus 16. All right, Emil, here's what I'm rolling with it. First, let's just start on a game that you and I agree on it. And that's the last one that you spoke of. It's Oregon State. True as a fact, this is not lost on anyone. It's been spoken about for the last 2 weeks, even more so last week. Oregon has not been impressive coming out of the gate here. And now they've got to go into this rivalry game against, let's be honest, a team that is going to feel like, a stepchild, like they've been left out. So Oregon State is going to come in here probably the more motivated of the two parties. They've got something to prove. Hey, why didn't you guys take us? It's like, the blended family and the father that comes by to pick up his kid. Well, that other kid's not my kid, so I left that one there, that type of deal. Yeah. So Oregon State is going to come out really in this thing with their hair on fire. And to be honest, man, they've been a pretty solid team to start off the season. So, there isn't a whole lot for me to worry about there from that standpoint. They've played pretty solid defense. I'd love to see more out of them offensively, but we haven't been able to get much offensively out of Oregon either. So I see this being a rather nip and tuck game between these two teams. The fact that this thing is 16 scared me a little bit. I feel like I'm getting tricked, but I'm not. I'm going to double reverse that. You're trying to mind trick me. I'm not going to fall for it. I'm going to believe what I see, and that's Oregon has not been impressive. Still got time to get it together. I just don't think it's going to be this week against a motivated, I don't want to say former rival, but they're still rivals. They just happen to be in different conferences now. Working backwards, going to double down on that same. You remember that whole Apple Cup thing? Washington State takes on Washington.
You can use Apple Cup anywhere, not just.
Right, because it's not, it's not offending anyone, at least not yet, until an apple goes out and murders someone. But anyway, I'm going to go Apple Cup, and I'm going to also take the dog here. Another team that got left out of the whole we're leaving the conference party. Washington State sitting there. Emil, I had a chance to sit down and watch them. It's one of those late night games. You had nothing to do. I'm sitting there watching. And Washington State looks impressive offensively. And when you sit here and look at it, they rolled up 70 points in week 1, albeit against Portland State. Still, they've got offensive chops. And last week against Texas Tech, again, who's not ever been accused of being a defensive juggernaut, They went out there and they rolled up 37 points, but they've got a competent passing game. They can be explosive. They get the ball down the field. And I think they're a problem for Washington, who on the flip side really hasn't been all that impressive offensively. You got a brand new coach there. So, it's going to take Jed Fish a little bit of time to pull everything together. You and I were higher on Washington than, maybe the pundits and the public at large was going into the season. But I see this as being a tough one for them and a potential loss here because Washington State is a little bit underrated going into this game. And the fact that Washington, who comes in here with the big reputation, yes, they played in the final game last year. Yes, I know that their quarterback and their coach and a couple of really good wide receivers left, is only a 4-point favorite in this game. So that kind of is telling me
Don't
something.
forget, these two schools that we're talking about are both playing essentially independent schedules this year. So for Washington State and Oregon State, this is like the big, not just a rivalry game, it's the big game on the schedule.
Absolutely. And I think the power of the mind here is on Washington State. So I'm going to grab them as a +4 in this, as an underdog here in this one. And then continuing to roll along, I am going to take a game people aren't really thinking about. It's Virginia playing Maryland. Last week, I faded Maryland because, Maryland shouldn't be an 8-point favorite on the road. Come back this week. No one's thinking about Virginia. Maryland's off of a loss. Why are they only 3-point favorites against Virginia? Well, Virginia they can be problematic. They've got a very nice quarterback in Anthony Calandria, and this guy rolls up a lot of offense. He's a pain in the ass, Emil. I've watched this guy play a couple times. Yes, can he go off the rails and make a boneheaded move? He can. There seems to be less of those in these first two games. So I think he's going to be a real problem for Maryland, who might not have their head right after that loss last week against Michigan State. So I don't really like them here coming out in this one and laying points once again on the road against a dangerous
You've got 3 rivalry games. For the geographically struggling in our audience, the Maryland-Virginia game is an old ACC rivalry type of game. Now Maryland's in the Big Ten, but Maryland and Virginia, if you don't know where the maps, they butt up against each other.
Yeah, they're fairly close, and it is indeed a rivalry game. So I like Virginia getting points at home. Maybe the odds makers will learn after this that Maryland is not really a team ready to lay points on the road against a competent opponent. If you got yourself a Temple, go ahead and lay points on the road, Maryland. But right here, against a competent team that's 2-0, that can move the football and play some defense if you need them to, I think Maryland's a live dog here. I will take them plus.
Wow, look at us with all these points. Let me summarize. Chad's with me on Oregon State. He's getting 16 in that game. He loves Washington State in the Apple Cup, grabbing 4 points. And then finally, in another rivalry game, he wants Virginia +3. So you guys, you got 6 picks here. College football, they're all getting points.
Well, not 6 picks, 5 actually.
5. Well, excuse me. You're right. That's what we have you here for, to correct my bad math, even though I'm supposed to be the math guy.
Hang on, before we jump into the NFL, here, I've got this quick question for you. We're 2 weeks into our college football season. We're 1 week into the NFL, and we all, let's act like fans here, because, essentially that's what we are. No one's putting on a helmet and running down and making a play this weekend, at least out of the two of us. So we're actually fans.
Yes.
Tell me, if you could think off the top of your head, 5 teams between college and NFL, 5 teams where you were wrong, seemingly 2 weeks into college, 1 week into the NFL. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to give you 5 teams that I think I was wrong on.
Okay.
And I got 4 from college, 1 from the NFL, because if I'm going off of just week 1 in the NFL, and not to go ahead and break my arm patting my back here, I feel pretty square about how I called all of these teams based on week 1 in the NFL. The only one I think I was wrong on, not to say that I was high on them, but this looks like they're going to be worse than what I thought they were, is the New York Giants. That's not the way you open up a season on the at home against Minnesota. So it looks like the Giants might be worse than I thought they were going to be. But in college football, I am willing to say now, 2 weeks in, that I was wrong about USC. I had them as a 7-5 football team this year. Miller Moss looks like he's going to be the goods. The defense is definitely improved. And if you've got good quarterback play and you got a defense, you're going to go far in college football. So it's hard for me to see USC as being a 7-5 football team this year. I might be wrong about Notre Dame. Love them after week 1. Little concerned about them offensively. And I even said on the show last week that I felt like Riley Leonard would come around. All right. If you're going to come around, Riley, this would be the week to fix all of that because they're on your head in South Bend. You better get right because they're gonna want you pulled out of there. I'm not sure if Notre Dame is a 10-2 team, not if they're going to get that kind of quarterback play. I might be wrong about LSU 2 weeks in. Yes, one of the teams that I was wrong about being better was the team that LSU played in week 1, but then they were kind of iffy once again last week. And I like to see teams respond in week 2. LSU didn't really do that the way that I wanted. Again, I'm going to put my faith in Brian Kelly, but I'm not so sure that LSU.
Not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you, I will say that I think part of the problem LSU faced last week was the way the schedule laid out. They lost a very big game to start the season. They have another big game this week, a road conference game against South Carolina. Road games in the SEC, no matter who you're playing, are big games. And in between, I think, would they play last week? Nicholls State or something like that?
I just don't think after you lose an opener in front of everyone, you take the next opponent lightly. You should want to squash them like a bug. I mean, hell, even Florida, who looked ridiculous in their opener, came out against Samford. And they've got Texas A&M this week. So
yeah, I got you.
I hear you, but I don't hear you. And the last one, I was higher than most on Penn State. 2 weeks in, Emil, I don't know. They might be the Penn State that you always say that they are. They could have lost that game against West Virginia. I actually sat there and watched it. West Virginia was hell-bent on not, winning the game. They wanted to fumble the ball.
The play that changed the West Virginia game, and I was on West Virginia that game, was, I don't want to whine about officiating. They missed calls for both teams all game. But the key call in that game, missing the offensive pass interference on that 50 or 60-yard pass.
It did change the shape of the game.
The shape of the game.
So might be wrong about Penn State. We're obviously going to have chances coming up here really soon to figure out what Penn State's all about. 2 weeks in, though, don't like it. So that's my 5 teams I might have been wrong about.
I'm thrilled that you think you were wrong about USC, and we'll see. I mean, again, I'll get much more excited about my Trojans if they can show me that sitting around for 2 weeks thinking about themselves in a good light now, they can go to Michigan and beat Michigan. Because no matter what we saw from Michigan last week, it's still Michigan. You're still on the road. Show me you win that game and my level starts to really ratchet up because I expect Michigan is going to give them everything they can handle that day. They're playing for their lives. Michigan knows we lose this game. That's 2 losses in September. We're done. Okay. So that's my take. Let's start. I'll reverse. Let me go NFL first. I was wrong about the Minnesota Vikings, I think. You would think a homer like me, and I wear the patch proudly, would want the Vikings to have a good year because I like Sam Darnold. He's a USC guy. I just thought his confidence would be shot. But I think that Minnesota's coach, giving him credit, is a good offensive mind. And maybe he's straightened this guy out, or maybe it's just a product of the Giants suck. And I was right. But right now,
we will indeed find out.
I feel like I was right. I saw him make throws that I saw him make at USC, granted in college where the windows are bigger, but where he just really stroked the ball confidently, let it rip. And if he's that Sam Darnold, and he does a decent job protecting the football, the Vikings aren't going to be nearly as bad as I thought they were going to be. Okay. Second, I'm going to go, and shame on me, but this was my fan tamping down and maybe not thinking clearly. I think the Cowboys, I was not high on them. Chad was.
I tried to told you.
Yeah. I think I let a little bit of the offseason nonsense, and to Chad's credit, and I don't know if you said this on the broadcast or we were having a conversation. Jerry Jones knows what his money gets in a bank account at 5%.
Those CDs, baby, those CDs.
These CDs, and he likes the show, and he spent 6 months negotiating with the media, keeping the Cowboys in the public eye, and at the end ended up where a smart 15-year-old could have ended up basically doing market deals.
Yeah, while all the rest of us were talking about CeeDee Lamb, he was thinking about his certificates of
Right.
deposit at
It's
the
like
bank.
200 million at 5%, that half a year. Oh, okay, I make 5 million bucks. So
I'm good. I
I'm good.
got you, CD.
So anyway, I think, when you really look, the Cowboys, when you watch them play, they do have a really good roster. The kid from Wake Forest, the corner that stepped in for Bland. I mean, I know
Yes, looks like all the rest that have lined
looks
up
like
there.
every other corner they have, which is good.
Yeah, big
Willie
time.
Willie McClay,
Shout out to Ann Harris.
and I should know this. Willie McClay does a great job in the draft with Dallas. He's their player personnel guy and de facto GM, if we want to be honest. So I don't want to get ahead over my skis, but I do think I may be wrong on my Cowboys. Now, flipping the script to college, you and I agree on two. Notre Dame, no way. Okay. The schedule is the only thing that's going to save Notre Dame. It stinks. Okay. Florida State's not what it was or we thought they would be. They've really got very few games other than, I would say, Louisville, maybe Georgia Tech if they bring their A game, and USC. So there's not.
Quite frankly, Florida State should have been on my list, but
Yeah, of course. But if you look, if you could lose to Northern Illinois, you can lose to anybody on your schedule. So, I mean, again, the quarterback play at Notre Dame is not up to snuff. And frankly, their young offensive line got beat up by a veteran Northern Illinois front. So, Notre Dame, I'm not high on. I was much higher on Penn State. Again, what's going to save them and let them accumulate wins are out of conference games like Bowling Green and Kent State next week. But I'm not sure. I mean, unless
their season won't be measured by the Bowling Greens and Kent
no,
States.
but I'm saying they may end up with 8 or 9 wins. But I'm not sure if the Penn State I've seen for 2 weeks is capable of beating an Ohio State, albeit at home, is capable of going to the Coliseum and beating USC right now. Unless a different team shows up in October at the Coliseum, I don't think Penn State's beating USC. So that's just me. I'm with you on that. And then the last one, I have to say, I kind of took the cheese with Oregon. I figured they'd be an 11-1 team. Let me tell you, if they go through Big Ten play, playing like they have the first 2 weeks, there's no way this team's an 11-win team. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be a monumental disappointment of a season if they continue.
Yeah, I mean, now maybe they turn it up. I'm wondering if this kid they brought in from Oklahoma, Gabriel, if maybe he's just not a fit. I mean, their offense doesn't really. I mean, they scored on a kick return. The kicking, that's part of the game. I get it, but a lot of their points were set up by the special teams in that Boise State game. I mean, it's not like they're an offensive juggernaut right now. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, they definitely pulled a rabbit out of a hat in there. So there's cause for concern there. So there you have it, folks. The 5 dead wrongs that we had so far in this early part of the season. Let's roll over into the NFL now, where we'll quickly talk about how we did last week and then get into the action that's coming up this week and what we think are the solid.
Last week we laid out a 5-1 week for you. So hopefully, this is what you got to learn. Don't handicap the handicappers. If you're using our picks and you have a bad Saturday, don't, that's what tends to happen. Stick with it because Sunday we got your money back. We were 5-1. My friend here had the pick of the weekend. Okay. The Saints. I mean,
yeah, listen, hey, these were all comfortable wins too. I like that.
The Saints I knew the Panthers were not going to be a good team. But the level of incompetence in Carolina right now. No, Tepper needs to be removed as the owner. That team is an absolute travesty. And, they just lost their Brown, their all-pro defensive tackle now is out for the year. So, their best player on the whole team is gone. So I don't know what to expect there. Then you came back, another great pick. I will say the Bucks -3. Jaden Daniels for the.
Hey, just as a rule for the folks listening out there, and you could put this away, an opening game on the road with a brand new coach and or a rookie quarterback does not lend itself to a point spread cover.
No, very astute. I mean, listen, Jaden Daniels, he did his thing. I mean, again, he
looks like he'll be good, though. He looks like he'll be good.
A little RG3 to me, though. He's running for 126 yards on like 12 carries, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, son, you got to remember the ball goes faster than your legs to steal your line, and
Well, that's our motto, baby.
you keep running, and eventually someone catches you. So throw the ball, Jaden. But I do think he's going to be good.
I will say this. I saw this part in the game, and maybe they build on that and they do more of it. You know, Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive
Yeah,
coordinator over there. When they went hurry up, they were a bit of a problem for the Bucks. So maybe they do more of that here. That's not what the defense is going to want to hear because they didn't play as well. So that's going to be a problem for them. But if you want to get into shootouts, I think that's where Washington needs to live, at least in the early
in the
going here.
early
Whether or
going.
not their defensive minded head coach will allow that to happen, we'll see.
And then you went big game hunting. You had the 49ers on Monday night giving 4.5 to the Jets. And we were talking before the show. That game, for those of you who didn't watch it, was not even as close as the final. The 49ers won 32-19. They kicked 6 field goals. So obviously, if they cash a couple of those in, their point total explodes. The Jets scored a touchdown in the second quarter to take a 7-3 lead.
Yeah, on one of those Aaron Rodgers specials.
Yeah, they didn't sniff They didn't sniff the end zone until there was 30 seconds left in the game, and the 49ers had the cheerleaders at safety. So 32-19 was not that close. It was really complete domination.
Yeah, Emil, I hope I haven't set the bar too high here. That's 3 wins, all with the winners double digits. I got something to live up to this week.
And then for me, I was 2-1. Eagles winner on Friday night against the Packers. Back and forth game, but I just like the 2.5 spread. And the Packers have a problem. We can, talk about that. Neither of us is picking their game this week, but the Packers have lost Jordan Love for what looks to be 3 to 6 weeks. Unfortunately, that's all it is. End of that game in the second to last play, he literally had his knee twisted. I was worried he did an ACL, but I'm happy that it's just a sprain. Good for him. You don't want guys getting hurt. But
Yeah, it looks bad.
yeah. I had the Steelers plus 3.5. Everybody who listens to the show regularly knows I'm not a big believer in Kirk Cousins. I'm certainly that line went up to 4.5 in some places by game time. The Falcon hype train was out of control, and while the Steelers didn't do much in this game offensively, they kicked 6 field goals, by the way. So fantasy guys out there, if you had the Steelers or 49ers kicker, you had a big week. Steelers won that game 18-10 as a dog. And then my loser for the week, and again, it goes back to the previous segment. I wasn't high on my Cowboys going into the year and probably should have known better. I let emotion get the best of me there. They went to that game in Cleveland, another game where not even close to the final was 33-17. The Browns scored 2 junk touchdowns, playing hurry up, going for it on every down, late third and late fourth quarter. That game was out of control, so I took a loss there. But 2-1, 5-1 for the NFL. So, folks, you're not getting killed. You basically lost a little vig first couple weeks here. So let's get in the black right now for the season.
Yeah, let's talk about the picks that we've got for this week. And just to close out the show, we might throw our mind to a couple of games here that might be of interest to some folks listening. But I'm going to go real quick here. Your Dallas Cowboys looked great. As has been stated, I'm higher on them than Emil was, at least going into the season. Week 1, they looked excellent, did everything they wanted to do against the Cleveland Browns. And so you know what happens. They throw a few more pepperonis on the pie this week. And they're doing it against a New Orleans Saints team that came in here and blew out their opponent in the first week. Yes, it was the Carolina Panthers. But I can't help but think the Saints are coming into this game feeling a little bit disrespected by this line. I expected the number to be somewhere around 4. It comes in at 6.5, and I think the Saints are the ones getting the value here. Derek Carr looks a whole lot more comfortable back there with the Saints. Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara, and I like the way the Saints defense ran around. Yes, it's the Carolina Panthers, but that's a professional football team, and on any given Sunday you can win, and they look extra great against Carolina. I don't see why they can't come in here against Dallas and play pretty solid defense. So I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints as 6.5-point underdogs.
You know what I like for you here, and I'm going to agree with you as a longtime Cowboy fan. This is a time slot that traditionally is not kind to my boys point spread wise. The lines when they play a 1:00 game tend to be inflated. It's usually an off market game. In other words, Dallas is used to being the 4:30 Fox game, the Sunday night game, or the Monday night game. When they get in this time slot, it just
tends to be a problem for them.
Yeah, this feels to me like 23-20. That's the kind of.
Got it. Now that'll definitely work
I'm
for
not even
us.
saying they're the winners. I'm just saying it feels like somebody wins 23-20.
Probably a nip and tuck game. In a rematch of a playoff matchup, Tampa Bay is heading out to Detroit again. We all know how that turned out in the playoff game. So the Bucks come into this thing revenge minded. Emil, I really like what I saw out of Baker Mayfield last week. He looks, speaking of quarterbacks that look comfortable, he looks really comfortable running Tampa Bay's offense right now. He knows where he wants to go with the football. There's very little indecision. And even when the guys are covered up and he's gone through his progressions, he makes, appropriate runs with the football. He's not Lamar Jackson, all right? So he's not going to gut the defense, but he does enough to get yardage there and keep the sticks moving. I really liked what I saw out of him. The defense looks pretty solid as well. They, had to deal with a running quarterback last week. That's not going to be the case here with Jared Goff. And in general, Emil, I like to fade teams that appeared on national television in a standalone game and ended up winning. There tends to be an overinflation next week, and I just think 7 points here for Detroit is a bit too much against a Bucks team that's competent, that can play football, and comes in revenge-minded. So give me Tampa Bay +7. In this one, it was supposed to be the return of Russ to Denver. I don't know what's going on there. I guess Russ is hurt, can't go, whatever. I had a chance, Emil, to watch Justin Fields. It looks like the Justin Fields in Chicago that frustrated people. So they're just, we'll give him time to grow. All right. I root for Justin Fields, but right now they're just off throws, like, really common throws that should be made that are off. Even out routes are being thrown behind receivers. There is the decision to run too often. And then there's just an inability to really read and make a decision with the football. This is what I'm seeing from Justin Fields. And that doesn't really lend itself to you going on the road and winning a game against a team that took a loss last week. Again, this is the NFL. I thought Denver played really hard against Seattle. And maybe if they had Bo Nix, who had already had 6 games under his belt, they probably win that game. I was, though they lost, I was impressed with how they played against Seattle, with the exception of the end of the game.
Do you know what this game feels like to me? I'm giving scores here. 17-16, somebody wins.
Yeah, it's one of those games. It's not going to be wide open offensively. I do like Denver at home getting points. I'm not understanding how the odds makers saw Pittsburgh play last week and think that is something that should be favored on the road. I fully expected Denver to be about a 2 to 3 point favorite in this game. Now that they're getting points, I'm going to take Denver +3 at home.
Especially, and I give you, this is a good, I like what you found here. I didn't take it, but I like it. Back-to-back road games. You got the Steelers, back-to-back road games, and this one involves a cross-country trip. That's hard on an NFL team.
Yeah, it's a shortened week. There's a lot of reasons to fade Pittsburgh here, so I'll fade them. I'm going to take Denver +3.
My friend here, coming off his 3-0 NFL week last week, is giving you all points here. He's got the he's got the New Orleans Saints +6.5 at my Cowboys. He's got the Tampa Bay Bucks +7 at Detroit, and he's taking the Denver Broncos +3 at home versus the Steelers. Well, I'll make it simple and quick, because first I'll start with you. I don't know what they're doing. I watched that Detroit game. Again, I didn't have the Rams. I would have had the Rams +4.5, and that would have been another bad beat. That game went overtime. The Lions got the ball first, scored a touchdown, won by 6. But I feel like the Rams, with the completely decimated offensive line, were able to move the ball relatively easily against Detroit, and that doesn't bode well. This is a team that got knocked out of the playoffs by the Lions last year. They remember that. They looked very good, very comfortable week 1. They're getting 7. I think that's bloated. This is a close ball game. I'm with you. Second, the Ravens. They lost that close game to the Chiefs, opening game of the season. We didn't talk about it. They lost by a toenail, okay, because they were going to go for 2. They scored. It looked like a touchdown that would have been 27-26. They reversed the call. I think whatever got called on the field should have stayed. I think if the ref was standing there and called him out, it should have stayed, and he called him in, because that evidence to me was so inconclusive. I couldn't believe they reversed it. That said, they sit around and they stew for 10 days. Now, couple that with they have Dallas next week in Dallas. You can't lose this game this week. You can't, because there's a good chance the Dallas game is a coin flip game, just like Kansas City game. So you can't take the chance that you lose to the Raiders. You conceivably could start the season 0-3. Not happening. Raiders cross country, 1 o'clock game. I think I'm almost certain it's a 1 o'clock start.
It is.
I'm taking the Ravens minus 9.5. This has the feeling of Minshew running around like a chicken with his head cut off, throwing the ball to Ravens. I feel like 38-10 here. Just feels right to me. So give me the Ravens minus 9.5. And then finally, I'm going to be a contrarian here. We all saw what your son's team did to the Bengals on Sunday. They shortened the ball game. They ran the football. Cincinnati looked out of whack. I don't know how much this Jamar Chase is affecting the team, or the situation with their star wide receiver, but I do know this. The Bengals have been a winning football team. It's almost hard for me to say that, but they have been for 4 or 5 years now. They've got a great quarterback and they've got pride, and they've given the Chiefs fits over the last 5 years. In this run the Chiefs have had, the Bengals have either beaten them or always played them tough. And I don't see Kansas City now, with all the new toys and weapons that Andy Reid has, trying to shorten the ball game the same way the Patriots did. To me, this feels like, okay, we're going to see these two quarterbacks show out. Somebody's winning this game. A little guy with the white shoe is going to kick it at the end. Somebody's going to win 30-27. And you're giving me 6 points with the Bengals. I think if the Bengals had drilled the Patriots last week, this is a 3-point line, maybe 3.5. I'm getting 6. So I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals plus 6.
All right, wrapping things up here. Emil agrees with me on the Bucks and on the road in their playoff matchup against Detroit. He likes them plus 7. He thinks the Ravens pull it all together after the disappointment in the season opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. He likes them laying 9.5 at home against the Raiders. And then he also thinks the Cincinnati Bengals get off of the schneid and pick up the pieces after losing to the Patriots and go into Kansas City and knock the Chiefs down a peg. And he'll take the Cincinnati Bengals plus 4. Emil, some other games maybe that
Don't whip me off. I need every point in that game.
What is it, 4.5?
6.
Yeah, he needs his hook, folks.
6. 6. I'm getting 6. 6.
Well, my goodness. Yes, that is correct. It is 6. It did open up at 4.5.
Came out. I need my 6 points.
No, it's not just the hook. It's a whole 1.5. Other games I really thought about here, Emil, was, the Packers without Jordan Love are laying 4 points against the Colts, who I thought played pretty well against Houston. I almost thought about taking the Colts on the road. The Jets laying 3.5 at Tennessee. I think I might go with that. Again, standalone game. You looked bad against the 49ers, but man, Tennessee, I don't think they look good at all, Emil. I'm just not.
The game they lost to the Bears, I think the Bears had 135 yards of offense.
I know it, man. And Tennessee's not good right now, and the Jets, this is an opportunity for them to pull it all together. As much crap as I talked about the New York Giants, I almost made them a pick this week as an underdog to the Washington Redskins, who have the rookie quarterback and, the new head coach. This is another position where they shouldn't be laying points. Almost went with the Giants, but, Daniel Jones just flinging a ball out there to someone who doesn't play for his team really, really scared me away on it.
Makes sense of, and for the life of me, the Chargers are given 6.5 on the road at the Panthers. Now, typically in a situation like this, if I just didn't think the Panthers were such a dumpster fire organizationally, I would take the Panthers normally, because
I had that thought, but can't do it.
Can't do it. They're a pro team, and traditionally professionals hate to be embarrassed, and 47-10 in your opener is embarrassing. But I just look at that team, and they're just like, let's be honest, the Chargers pulled away against the Raiders late, but they're still figuring things out there with Harbaugh. But I don't know. I mean, it's normally 1 o'clock game. That team coming to play the Panthers, I'd be all over the Panthers normally, but I can't do it.
Yeah, too scared of the quarterback play there. Listen, we love Bryce Young and the story of this guy, but it's just abysmal at this moment. What do you make of Arizona being a 1-point favorite against the Rams? I would say, just off the top of my head, Rams look like a solid team. But yeah, Kyler Murray, man, at any moment, I watched him against the Bills. I'm a Kyler Murray fan at this
Well,
point.
I am.
Yeah, at any point, this guy can explode on you. So I didn't know what to make of
Well,
that.
I think this game will be a high scoring game, and I think that'll be the problem ultimately for Arizona in this game. If the Rams even get a little bit more continuity on the offensive line, I think they're going to move the ball against. And that was a problem for the Cardinals, right? They got the lead in Buffalo, but they couldn't stop Buffalo.
Yeah, the defense just hasn't lived up to anything I think people want there. Houston opened at 4, and now they're up to 7. And Emil, I like Chicago if I was going to pick a side here.
If I had to pick a side, I like Chicago. But if you want to go into something, we'll talk about that next show where you may be right and I may be wrong. It's only one game and he's a rookie, but like somebody's got to coach my guy, Caleb Williams. You can't do the recess ball. It's not,
Man, it is what it is with him.
it's
That's
not
how
going
he
to work
plays
there.
football.
It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I want your opinion on this. This is the last thing we're going to talk about before we head out. You like Philadelphia. They're 6.5 against the Kirk Cousins-led Atlanta Falcons. You have an opinion on that?
Well, when the number gets fat, last week Cousins was giving points. This is a
Yes.
game where it just feels like a Kirk Cousins special. Okay, people will run to the window with the Eagles because they get a couple extra days. They beat a good Packer team, and the Falcons look like garbage at home. But this feels like one of those games where the Eagles get a lead because of Kirk Cousins' mistakes. That helps. It's 10, it's 13. And it
And
kind
he
of,
throws for 250 in the second half?
yeah, and at the end of the game, the Eagles win the game 31-27 or something like that. And you're
Yeah.
sitting there with an Eagles ticket going, how did I not win that? And this feels to me like a Kirk Cousins special. I probably buy it up to a touchdown if I had to bet the game. I mean, if I'm going somewhere and I'm like, I gotta have action on this,
Yeah.
I'm probably buying it up to a touchdown and praying that's what happens because I'm not going to lay that many points because I'm kind of with you on the Eagles. Something's not right there. I know it sounds
Look,
funny.
I'm telling you, something's tainted in the water there, and I'm with you. Falcons off of a home loss on the road. I would probably take them getting the 6.5 points here, but this really smells like an over. The total is
It's a Monday
46.
night game, right? This is the Monday night game.
It is the Monday night game this week.
I mean,
So
if you're Atlanta and you're not putting your best foot forward in this game, you're in for a long season.
yeah, you're on prime time after a home loss, and you've got $100 million quarterback back there. You better come correct, man, or you're gonna, the Michael Penix chants are gonna start in Atlanta the next time that you guys are home. All right, that's it for us. We've given you an hour plus here of time, and we've given you quite a few solid picks here. So enjoy those, enjoy the action this weekend, and we'll be back next week to wrap things up and talk about whatever it was. Hopefully, all of the players make it safely to their games this week, and we have no outside of the stadium incidents from all of these guys out here. All right, that's it for us. I'm Chad Wilson. That's Emil Calomino. It is the Two Chumps Football Podcast. We will see you guys next week.